Welcome to Sessions, a podcast about the gaming industry and the people who work in it. My name is Matt Demers, and I started this project to get a look at how people in the video game and esports industry work, grow, and survive. My first guest is Jake Kulinski, a Heroes of the Storm commentator and the founder of the Town Hall Heroes podcast. We talk about his transition to heroes from Smash Brothers, Macaroni and Cheese, and how important it is to have a support group while you're growing. Stay a while and listen. Sessions is about the humans, not the handles. Jake, thank you so much for joining us on the show. How's it going?
Going well, man. It's great. I mean, obviously Overwatch just came out. It's been a lot of fun consuming my life, but other than that, I'm quite well.
I hear that across the board. I think a lot of people are really getting sucked into it right now. How many hours have you put in, and how much money have you spent on boxes?
I did the 50 boxes, which is, I guess, $40. And I'm like, you know what? That's my cutoff point. And the hours put in, I don't want to know.
You don't want to know. I think that's the good thing about the Blizzard client, at least, is that it doesn't show as prominently, I guess, as Steam, how many hours you've put in. Usually in Steam, right underneath that play button is how many hours you've put in. And for me with Dota, I've put in 1,200 hours by now, and it's just kind of that's the low end. Some of the pros that I follow, I look at their Steam profile, and it's oh yeah, they put 10,000, 12,000 hours in it. It's just nuts. So pretty much the point of this podcast, like I said, I wanted to kind of examine some more human stories in esports and gaming in general, and more specifically, the people that work inside of it. Because a lot of people just consume gaming now, we obviously know that, but working in it is an entirely different beast, an entirely different, I wouldn't say problem, but it's just another set of challenges. So I primarily know you, I came on to following you mostly with MLG 2014. However, I know that you've done a lot of work within the Super Smash Brothers community, Brawl, Melee, that kind of stuff. So maybe, did you want to just give me a brief kind of run through of your don't want to say career, but your history, I guess?
Yeah, so long story short, back 10 years ago, I guess, 2006, when I was in high school, I started playing Melee. Early on in my career, trying to become a pro gamer, I realized it probably wasn't going to happen. And the main reason with Melee, and kind of one of the growing pains the game always had, was I didn't live anywhere near other players. I had no good way to practice. So I started becoming more of a tournament admin, and I was like, all right, well, I'll bring the players to me. So I started running all my own events. I ran a series called Cataclysm with the mages, and then I started my own series called Viva La Smash, which got a lot of recognition and transitioned over to building a full circuit to promote basically cross-region, competition, get people traveling from one state to the next, and earn points for the circuit, which ultimately had a grand finals, which was the first Apex. And obviously Apex has gone on to be a huge part of the Smash community. And from there, I kind of got a job with MLG. MLG ran Brawl in 2010. I worked with them as an admin, and just kind of went from there, went to school deciding I wanted to pursue esports, and I did.
Something I was reading about while I was just doing a little bit, I tracked down one of your AMAs on I think the Heroes of the Storm board or something. Or no, sorry, this was the announcing of Anaheim in 2014. You were saying that you did graphic design work as freelance or as kind of a pay the bills kind of thing. Can you maybe tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's there was this kind of weird decision I had to make in my life. I had been trying to pursue esports the best I could. And I had been an admin at MLG, but this was 6 weekends a year where I made a little bit of money just to be involved in events. So I was super into StarCraft 2, I was super into Melee, and I decided that, to go to the next level, the option was college. So I went to school for graphic design, web design, kind of a mix of both. And in New York City, which led me to become an intern at Major League Gaming, where I got my internship with them. And I already knew that company very well, right? I was very close with a lot of people there. And it just kind of translated into me becoming a producer for the company, where I was directly in charge of all things and everything Melee in 2014.
Yeah, obviously, though. But I have this feeling, I guess, just from talking with a lot of people in esports, that there's always that kind of lead up to where you're spending, I guess, full-time hours on it, where you kind of have to be in that weird middle ground where you can't take on so much out of industry freelancing that it's eating up your time to actually pay attention or participate, and you still need to keep the lights on, right? So it was that kind of just a weird necessity. Did you have that kind of rough period?
Yeah, there was a long time where I was working for random design companies, a company called the Doctors Channel, that just making websites for little doctors' offices and all kinds of different different things of that sort just to continue that pursuit of esports, because it was hard and it still is hard. I mean, I guess the next chapter after MLG is when I transitioned to be a freelancer entirely. And I mean, it's definitely another beast.
Yeah, something I wanted to actually touch on was like what happened with Anaheim, because I have a feeling that there was a lot of people that just kind of like viewed that tournament as a little bit chaotic. I guess that's the nice way of putting it. Can you maybe like shed a little light on like how that kind of tournament, I want to say, changed your career trajectory a little?
Well, Anaheim was an ambitious event, right? MLG used to be the home of Melee for a very long time. And when we had these big expectations, we ran this whole circuit to kind of get people into the event, get them involved. But the Smash community and many other communities were incredibly resistant to MLG TV. So this provided us with a lot of growing pains to just try to make our stake. We had a VG Boot Camp and we had Clash tournaments, both running broadcasts for us and both being involved in all these broadcasts, but they weren't thrilled about broadcasting on MLG TV themselves. So it turned into a bit of a complication. Then when it got to the actual event, I think we had around 200 entrants. And I think that year Evo had close to 700 entrants. And that kind of, it was discouraging, right? We had put so much in, and then Evo just kind of does things the way Grassroots has always done it. And it was just infinitely more successful. So I'd almost say that like the additional structure and the additional like restrictions that MLG was trying to enforce hurt it a lot. And then the event itself, we had a tournament organizer that was not accustomed to running Smash. Smash tournaments are run a very specific way, and the Smash TOs are valued members of the community. Well, that TO wasn't really used to running Smash, and there was a lot of issues there. And at the same time, the thing that hurt me the most in terms of just like, you know, my, I guess, mental health was all of the VODs were not saved. They forgot to press record, and the MLG TV platform did not save the VODs either. So literally all of the matches from that Smash tournament were lost. And a random fan saved it in like 480p or something at home. So there is a version that exists, but
it's not ideal.
That was kind of the nail in the coffin for my involvement with Melee at MLG, because like there were just too many hiccups, I guess.
Did that kind of, did those hiccups, I understand that you left MLG, or I believe you were laid off from MLG soon afterwards, and it's like, obviously I'm not going to, ask you to go into your firing, but at the same, or, departure, I didn't mean to say that insensitively, but do you kind of, does that like stay with you? Like I realize for me, when I've had like something go not as planned, and that's, I guess, putting it lightly, that sticks with you, because like as you kind of go on to further projects, you realize, okay, these are the things that you need to hit in order to keep that from happening again.
I think it just made me want to trust myself more than others, which is like a really bad thing, I would say. And I've stepped back, I've learned a lot, but there was a period of time where I didn't trust anyone to do anything. So long story short, from there, it's just like, I didn't leave MLG anytime soon. I was with the company for a while, and they did layoffs on a good chunk of their production staff because they just weren't having events. But I wasn't happy because I was working on Call of Duty, and I just really wasn't interested in the game. I wasn't interested in the community, and esports is a passion project. You're not going to work 60 hours a week on something you don't love. And that's kind of what Call of Duty was for me. But yeah, it stuck with me. And, when I transitioned away and I started focusing on heroes, I was afraid to trust or rely on anyone to do anything at all. And I just kind of created this atmosphere where it's like I need to do literally everything, to the point where I built my home setup where I make the graphics, run the stream, mix the audio for me and my co-commentator, do the broadcasting, and do the commentary all at once. And it was hard, really hard.
Was there a breaking point eventually?
Eventually, no, there's never a breaking point. I just finally made it, right? Eventually, I just started getting the opportunities, and I was able to focus more on the big LAN events rather than the home broadcasts, which were incredibly difficult to produce.
Was it worth it? Just having that degree of control, you kind of like lose the ability to kind of push the blame off on someone else. It's like, okay, well, if things are going to be good, it has to be done, by me.
All the burden is my own, and I like that. I would say that it drove me insane for a while, just with the amount of work and effort I was putting in, and not always getting the results I was hoping for. But at the same time, I think it allowed me to learn a lot I never would have been able to learn.
So going back to Heroes of the Storm, like, why that game?
When it boils down to it, I was really into StarCraft 2. That was the only other game that had truly captured my passion, other than Smash. And I attended BlizzCon back in 2013, I believe it was. Might have been 2014, with my good friend. Actually, we used to be teammates in Melee, and we both fell in love with StarCraft. His name was Black Mage. Nowadays, he's called Kubi. But we attended together to watch the StarCraft 2 finals, and that's when they had Heroes of the Storm playable for the first time. And we're just like, well, this game's actually really fun. So we decided we just wanted to pursue that. We were both big Blizzard fans for a very long time. We loved the characters, and the game seemed like it had really, really huge potential. So it's like, all right, let's just commit. Let's do a podcast for it and just keep driving towards it. And they did a really long alpha period. It was like there wasn't a lot of competition when it came to who was trying to be a commentator, who was trying to run events. And it felt kind of like Smash, because when it came to running Smash tournaments, you just had to do it. It was kind of like, if you build it, they will come. It's not like I had all of these titans that were barring the gates and preventing me from getting in for the opportunity. Heroes ended up being just like that. I just created events, and they did well. So I think it's really, I guess to answer your question a little bit more directly, Heroes, because I love Blizzard games and because the game is just genuinely fun. And it also seemed like, just the right place at the right time.
If there was, like, obviously getting into any kind of game, you've got to look at the game's competition. And, for a game like Heroes, it is markedly different from League of Legends and Dota, but it isn't immediately apparent. Like, for me, it took some time to actually realize, like, what makes the game different and special. Was it intimidating to, like, go into throwing yourself into that game, being like, okay, there are these two bigger games that are likely going to be commanding a whole lot of more attention and money than this one will, at least at the start? Was that something that was in, like, the back of your head, I guess?
No, I never really looked at it that way. I've always said, a game can thrive on its own as long as it's good enough. And Heroes is different enough from League and Dota fundamentally to make it stand out. And with Blizzard, it's like I just had that level of trust there that, the opportunities would exist. Now, it's weird because I never got into League and Dota. I couldn't get into those games myself because the actual average game length was just too long, unappealing for me, right? That's just not what I've always wanted. I find Dota remarkably entertaining to watch. I watch the TI every year. Only time I can really just invest and sit down and watching it. But for me, as a player, Heroes just synced up so much better in terms of, like, the game length and just the way that the matches flowed out and the team fights and just the nonstop action. And I just kind of told myself, I'm like, okay, if I feel this way, there have to be, thousands and thousands of other people that agree that this is what they would rather play.
Did it help that you had kind of the partnership with, like, Kubi? For people who are listening and haven't watched any of Jake's stuff, essentially, you guys lived together for a while doing Heroes stuff, and you kind of founded the Town Hall Heroes podcast?
Right. We founded the podcast and everything way before we decided to live together. It was kind of like after I got laid off at MLG that I said, you know what? Hey, I'm going to come live with you. He has his own house. He has tons of extra space. I'm going to come live with you, and we're going to do commentary together in your house. And that was a huge, huge advantage for us.
Definitely just having that kind of, like, open space. Like, I kind of think about it in a way of different people's situations in terms of, what they're able to do. And not everyone kind of has that ability to just, like, have that openness, I guess is the word that I'm thinking. It's like they might be living in an area that doesn't have good internet, so they're not able to stream. They're kind of limited in ways that infrastructurally that you can't immediately just fix.
I mean, it was honestly, the stars aligned for us. Like, he had fiber optic internet already. We were both already working on this game together, and to just be in the same house and be best friends for many, many years. I mean, a decade prior, we had started playing Smash Brothers together as teammates. We met at a tournament. It just kind of worked out for us.
You were saying that his name previously, I guess, in Smash was Black Mage. Was he part of like the group that you guys had like made some tournaments with?
Oh yeah, he's who brought me into running tournaments. He was running tournaments before I started doing it. I ended up joining him and two of his classmates, or three actually. They were called the Mages, and my name was Blue Death back in the day. And so I was the honorary Blue Mage amongst the mages. He was Black Mage, there was White Mage, there was Green Hunter, which was the Green Mage, and a guy named Ghetto Fabulous, who was the Red Mage.
Perfect. I think like the thing that I like about Smash is that they have a very they have an affinity for themes. Like they have an affinity for just like taking themes either from like anime or video games or other kind of like fiction, and they like applying that to their games and tournaments and that kind of stuff. And it's just like it's kind of an unabashed enthusiasm, because like I'd imagine if that were to start in this day and age, a lot of people would just be yelling cringe. But I think it's just like worked for a lot of people because, you know, everyone was the same not the same type of nerd, but you kind of understand where the enthusiasm came from.
Yeah, and the other big difference with something like Smash Brothers or Street Fighter is it's not an online community. It's an in-your-face, person-to-person community where everyone's traveling together, meeting up at the same location, and making genuine friends. And it's a lot harder to be a campy troll in real life than it is on the internet.
Is it? I like you think that the campy. Oh no, sorry, I misread you there. I thought you meant campy in a different connotation. I was gonna say it's probably a lot easier to be a troll on the internet because you've got you've got that anonymity there. But I'd imagine like once you're comfortable with a group of people, you know, that kind of, you know, you lose that weirdness. I guess you lose that nerves. Something I was asked to, speaking about these kind of like groups of friends and stuff. Something I was told to ask you about. I kind of did some research beforehand anyway, and I asked, you know, what would be a question that would kind of, you know, get you a little tilted, let's put it that way. I was asked to ask you about a macaroni and cheese store, a macaroni and cheese restaurant.
Oh my God. Did Prague put you up to this?
Just a little bit. I asked him what's something I could ask Jake about that would put him on tilt, and he just said, ask him about mac and cheese at Smack.
Yeah, Smack is glorious. I know he's obsessed with it, and I didn't have it in my past trip, but
he was telling me that you guys spent a lot of time there, at least. Is that kind of like, is it important to have those kind of rituals, I guess, with the, you know, a group of people that you're spending a lot of time with?
For sure. I mean, the New York community for esports and Smash and everything, we all have our little rituals, but the Smash crew, we would always go get smacked together. It's just, I don't know. It's just a mac and cheese place where they only make mac and cheese, but it is absolutely glorious.
And this is like before the hipster revolution of like a hyper-focused restaurant. This is like just like, okay, we're going to do this. That's it. Yeah, I looked it up and I had to ask him which one it was, but he was like, there's three of them. Obviously, it's comfort carbs. You know, you can't go wrong with that kind of stuff. Like, how important, I guess, is that kind of camaraderie to just like surviving? Because like the people that he was mentioning all have gone on to kind of like do things in gaming and esports besides just kind of enjoy it. Like some of the people, you know, are working at Twitch or YouTube or wherever now. And is it important to kind of have like those people around you that are taking things just as serious as you are? And I guess that kind of extends to Kubi himself. Like you need to have that kind of support group.
It's actually critical, I think. It's not even just like a passion for the game. It's a passion for the culture. It's a passion for seeing the idea of esports thrive. And when you surround yourself by people that genuinely love it as much as you all want to pursue it, but in different ways. I think back to actually my oldest friend in all of esports is Milk Tea. Milk Tea has done so much good for gaming in general. I mean, just as a powerful, intelligent female gamer, there are many of them, but she has done so much. Now she's working for YouTube. She's done TED Talks in the past. So like, you know, from day one, I just happened to meet really remarkable people because my very first Smash tournament is where I met her. Happened to be her very first Smash tournament as well.
That's cool. Like, I think it's one of those things where if you're invested in the culture, you don't want to give up on it quite like as easy. Like, I think there are, you know, depending on your level of investment and how much you're participating, you can just like step away from it. You can just be like, okay, this isn't working for me, or, you know, this is getting too much for me at the moment. I'm just going to kind of disengage and leave. But it takes a certain type of person to be like, oh no, okay, you know, there's a problem here. We need to actually fix it, instead of just being like, okay, well, I'm just gonna take a step back and let someone else deal with it.
Right. No, you're committed. Like, I mean, and that's why I think you're right. I never thought about it to that extent of like how critical the people around me have made this whole thing. But it's not even just people that are in the culture too. Like I'm really fortunate to the point where my fiance has really enabled me to do so much more in esports than I ever would have been able to.
I mean, like, just from my personal experience, just having people who know, like, the struggle of it, I guess, it's like, you have to have people that are trying, I guess. Like, there are people who are just going to look to comfort you and look to just say, okay, things are tough right now, but they won't be, down the road. But it's helpful to have someone who has gone through or is going through the same problems as you, or at least the same process, because it's easier to like collaborate. It's easier to kind of just commiserate, I guess, and be like, yeah, this sucks, but we're going to get through it.
I would agree wholeheartedly. I mean, just being on that same page and the wavelength of just acknowledging that this is, we work in esports in general, we all work so much, and oftentimes we work for free. And it's just this kind of acknowledgement that it's like, well, this is bigger than me. This is for helping esports become, or at least your specific esport that you're investing your time into, to help it grow, to help it improve and become a better ecosystem for the players, the viewers, the talent, everyone.
Going back to Town Hall Heroes, just kind of on that note, like just having, I wouldn't say the excuse, but having the habit of coming together regularly and talking about the game, did that help just kind of like establishing like a routine and a very a consistent experience, I guess, for the people that were watching it?
Yeah, I would say it helped in every aspect. It helped the community start to get to know the players because the players were guests. It helped me and my co-hosts become relevant. It just gave us a beacon, a spotlight to discuss the game and talk about it at a high level. And from there, we start to know the stories of the players through that show. And then we bring those stories to the tournaments that we're working at. And it just had so much harmony for everything involved.
Was there ever a moment where it didn't seem like it was on an upward trajectory? Was there ever like a moment where you were just kind of like worried that it was coasting and wasn't going to take you anywhere?
I mean, I've done it for over 2 years now, and there are definitely ups and downs. I mean, at this point, the entire original cast is gone. One of the members, we ended up shuffling him out in favor of having more pros on the show because we were kind of feeling that. We were feeling like we hit that kind of the slope that was too steep, and we weren't climbing. And we needed to find a change. And we brought on 2 pros a week instead, and we saw results, and it worked out. But at episode 100, the other 2 original co-hosts, Kubi and Zoya, decided they were done. They actually ended up stepping away. And it was also a big challenge because then I had to suddenly find replacements for them. So there have been struggles, for sure, with that kind of show.
Was it difficult to try to like adapt to those like changing lineups?
Yeah, and I'd say I'm still learning a lot. But the benefits of, doing it for 2 years is you have so many different kinds of guests. And with those guests, you learn how to interact with people differently. Some guests are going to talk way too much. Some guests you have to really provoke to talk in general. So I'd say that's pretty much the same for the host. And it's almost just kind of like, my burden to train them to, basically understand how to be optimal in every show.
I guess like when we look at the classic casting pairs and that kind of stuff, or the Artosises and the Tasteless and that, and so on and so forth, it's that synergy, it's that comfort that really drives. Like once you get the synergy out of the way, and once you get the building of the synergy out of the way, that's when you kind of have the room to actually like go nuts and do your actual job. It's like you're kind of unconstrained by that burden of, what is this person going to think if I throw it to him? Is he going to be prepared? Do we have that trust level there? Is that something like you've just kind of had to build over time with different people?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, like you said, sometimes you'll cast with a commentator that you really don't know a whole lot about for the first time, and it's always a challenge to make it feel fun, right? You always want to give that sense of camaraderie no matter what. If I think to like other commentators, Tastosis is a classic combo because they're like genuinely really good friends that just kind of go in and they've just been rocking it in Korea for a long time. But then you think of someone like Day 9 who literally, he can dance on the floor with anyone. He just comes out, he's just fun, he's happy, he makes you smile, he makes everyone smile, and he treats you with immense amounts of respect. And that's kind of exactly what I've tried to do on my own. I just, those are the first two most important things. Always treat your co-commentator with tons of respect and have fun. And as long as you love the game and as long as you can scream about the game with excitement and passion, well, it's going to be a good time for everyone.
It's interesting that you bring up Day 9, mostly just because I feel that he is a very common role model for a lot of people in esports to have. Is there anyone specific that you looked at your casting career and said, okay, even if I want to do my own thing and have it eventually become my own identity, I at least want to pattern myself after someone else or take inspiration after someone else to start?
It's definitely Day 9. I mean, 100%. He's actually... especially early on in my commentary career, it was kind of funny. I was working at Heroes of the Dorm, not this year, but last year, and I was not a commentator. I was on the production team because that's my background. And he was one of the casters. But I had already been a commentator for other events online. A lot of the competitive stuff was still super grassroots because the game was only in alpha, and Kubi and I had been doing all the casts. So Day 9 was really excited to see me because he had actually just studied all my casts to learn the game better quickly. And that just created a really crazy starstruck kind of moment where it's just whoa, you've been researching my content. And from there, he kind of became a bit of a mentor for me for a short while, where he was giving me a lot of advice and consulting and just kind of, chiming in where needed and going out of his way to watch my stuff once in a while to send me some feedback, which was the most valuable thing ever as a starting out commentator.
Are you the type of person that needs to kind of have those wins every once in a while to provide long-term motivation?
No, I wouldn't say so. I'm pretty stubborn and I'll just keep pushing forever.
I guess what I'm really curious about with Town Hall Heroes is mostly just I'm trying to codify, or I'm trying to decipher the first mover's advantage, where usually early in an esports career or an esports timeline, like a games timeline, there will be one product or there will be one person or group of people that take the reins in terms of directing the early growth of the scene. And they usually are the ones that are connecting the most with the players, because the players are making a jump from being relative unknowns to being prominent in the community. So they want a bridge, or they want a bridge to more prominence, that kind of thing. And from, I don't think it's an unfair assessment to other people to think that Town Hall Heroes was that for Heroes of the Storm. How do you kind of look at that? You need to, you're obviously going into it originally because you're passionate about the game, but does it kind of take its own beast after a while where you feel like you're kind of responsible for an entire community's direction?
I didn't ever look at it that way, but there was a point of reflection where I realized that's what it was. And it wasn't even just Town Hall, because I was also running the community's largest broadcast for a tournament, Kings of the Storm. And then eventually I was the community representative for ESL, and I was running all of their broadcasts. So it did kind of become this whole situation where I was in the driver's seat to an extent, right? Blizzard's a little bit different than Dota, where Blizzard will always have a little bit more control than Valve would. But for a good while, especially in the alpha stages before Blizzard was truly involved, we kind of were in that situation. But our whole goal was to build up the esports scene to begin with. Our whole goal was to bring notoriety to those players. So I guess it just felt natural.
Something that I was actually curious about that, really kind of pinged back to me with what you were saying there is that kind of working environment with Blizzard where they seem like they just want to shepherd people that are passionate about their product into making good things, because obviously if someone's genuinely excited to be there, they're going to produce a better product. Something that I'm seeing with Heroes of the Storm, at least, and with other Blizzard products, is that there is a caster stable. There is a talent stable of Blizzard, not necessarily StarCraft or not necessarily Heroes of the Storm. They are Blizzard people. It's the Anaprocers, the In-Controls, the U's, the Gillies, that kind of stuff, where it's if you've worked in a Blizzard game before and you have a good relationship with Blizzard, you're interested in another Blizzard title, there's a good chance you're probably going to get that kind of bridge. Is that kind of true? Is there kind of a Blizzard, family in terms of just I wouldn't say third party or independent people, but people who kind of work at a prominent level with their games?
Yeah, definitely to an extent. But I would also say they do their best to try to keep it really organic and natural. Because even though, a lot of us are involved in multiple things, like Gilsey Tastosis, who have been doing StarCraft for a long time, cast, Heroes things, like Heroes of the Dorm and so on and so forth. but they also want to they don't want to restrict people from getting in. So like DreamHack Austin, Jay Howe, he's a guy that's putting in great work. He's a young commentator. He was there. He got the opportunity. He came in and he nailed it. I mean, he did a really great job. So they're always looking to still give as much opportunity as they can. But there are definitely people that seem to be, kind of at the top of the list. But at the same time, those are often the people that do the most work and work the hardest for the game.
Is it, again, kind of going back to that first mover's advantage, like how, as esports grows, is it going to get more difficult for people to kind of make that initial, splash that they need to in order to get noticed?
I mean, it's always hard to get noticed no matter what. Yes, that early mover's advantage is a thing. But, you look at Nathanius. Nathanius is a StarCraft 2 commentator where StarCraft 2, especially in the early days, they called it the old boys club. So it was pretty much like, Husky and Day 9 and DJ Wee and all these guys that were already involved in StarCraft or esports or something that controlled the commentary for that game for a very long time. And it wasn't until I believe what Nathanius was doing is he was offering an audio feed of English commentary for Korean streams. So he was saying, hey, if you want to watch this Korean stream, tune into it, mute the audio and listen to my audio and I'll commentate it for you. And it was all synced up for the viewer so that they could tune in and experience the with an English cast. And he was a nobody. I mean, relatively a nobody. And now he's doing literally everything. He did the work. He found his niche, and he made it happen. And that was pretty late into the life cycle of StarCraft.
So I guess what you're saying is that going past the very general, things that every community needs early on in its life, the Cornerstone podcast, the main interviewer who knows all the players, that kind of stuff. Eventually you move past that stuff, and it's almost like it doesn't make, like for Dota, for a little while I was considering, what my role in Dota was going to be, and someone suggested casting, and I just said, no, it doesn't make sense for me to become a caster because the work that I would need to do in order to become a caster, it would be too long into the game's life, considering the oversaturation of people that are doing it and ex-pros who are going to be retiring and going into casting and that kind of stuff. So it's almost like you have to make your own, you have to make that niche instead of just like taking one that's almost predetermined, I guess.
I would go as far to say that if you want to be a caster or anything in esports, you have to put in more work and more time than any person would ever consider to be reasonable. And that is a raw fact. Everyone that is there and everyone that has made it in commentary has put in relentless amounts of work and effort to make it where they are.
Of course, but I'm more just saying that if there are established casters, you're going to have to work harder than them in order to show that you're worth that time. Like, I'm looking at things like Beyond the Summit, where, sure, like, Beyond the Summit is a Dota 2 studio that started by doing the exact same thing that Nathanius did. They took Southeast Asia and Chinese and Southeast Asian tournaments that no one was watching and there was no access to in the English-speaking market, and they just decided, okay, well, we're going to be the ones that stay up for it, and we're going to, crowdfund for a tournament, and we're going to figure out, for a studio, and we're going to figure out ways in order to bring this niche that people almost didn't expect to ever come to English-speaking, markets, because no one was doing it. No one was saying, okay, well, we want to stay up till 5 a.m. in order to watch this Southeast Asian tournament that no one really cares about, but we need to provide a service for. So it's kind of an evolution of that. They saw, what Join Dota was doing, or they saw, what other people were doing for the major English tournaments, and they said, okay, well, we're not going to be able to outcompete for them, so we need to do something that is going to show our talents, but isn't a total saturated environment. It's like, if someone wanted to become a Heroes of the Storm caster right now, you guys do have a stable of people that are comfortable and are going to be the first calls for someone like Blizzard. So it's like, if you want to become a caster in Heroes of the Storm, you've got to outwork you guys, because there's already that kind of comfort there. There's that familiarity between the audience. We're seeing it in League of Legends right now, where there's a lot of tier 2, tier 3 casters that are trying to move up, but because the LCS has built this familiarity with the casters that are there, we're only starting to see new people come in now because there's been a churn in terms of talent. So it's like, I guess where would you kind of like, what advice, I guess, would you give to someone who's looking at like a very saturated position, or a position where people are very comfortable and are saying, well, I want to do that despite, the hill that I have to climb?
I would almost say like try to find something in the game that might not already be covered. Like I mean, if I think about some of the other people in Heroes in particular. Like, for example, let's think of Kendrick Swish. He's a YouTuber from Europe that basically he made plays of the week videos, and he's just like a YouTuber that just did like his own content, and he made his own splash in the community based on that. And he was able to transition from becoming relevant in something else into commentary. He didn't go straight to try to become a commentator. He made his relevance elsewhere. Josh Ebb also kind of got a lot of notoriety only recently, just because he would do basically once a week, he would take the most epic play that he could find and he would break it down and do analysis. And he has a weekly video through that. So there's like small niches you can find building content that's a little bit indirect but still relates to esports that can make you a personality, right? The first thing is to get your name out there. Once the community that you're looking towards starts to recognize your name for one thing or another, it becomes infinitely easier to pursue anything else, right? I mean, that's all it takes.
Yeah. Kind of in that vein, like how is it important to you anyway to have that comfort with pro players from, I guess, the growing days of the alpha and that kind of thing? You've talked with these people for, like you were saying, it's been around 2 years now. So how easier does that make your job that you don't exactly need to come in and try to convince people that you're like a real person?
I mean, it certainly helps, but like it wasn't, like you said, it was really difficult for a really long time. I remember the first time we had Zuna on the show, he was just like, "Who are these people? Like, why am I here? What am I doing?" He was so incredibly disinterested on being on the show, and it's now I look back at it and it's like we've become really good friends. So yeah, that's the thing you can do most though, is just kind of keep reaching out, just kind of make, as long as you make the emphasis about the player and not about yourself, and push and push and push and grow those players, they're going to be excited about it.
I kind of think that's like a little bit of a barrier to entry in terms of just like getting involved in esports, mostly just from what I've noticed in on a person-to-person level, because a lot of the people that are going to multiple events they kind of have that little, I don't want to say clique, because clique has a very negative connotation, but it's like I look at the more famous kind of league casters or personalities or Dota personalities and that kind of stuff, and like the amount of people that they are dealing with on a daily basis that want their attention for, I want to say, capitalistic reasons. Like, if I'm talking to someone that's much like, I think about it like Day9. Day9 probably has a ton of people talking to him every day that want him to make them famous or want him to do something for them. And there isn't really that, there isn't that reciprocation. There's not much that a random person on Twitter can really do for Day9. So his resources are limited. And, at events, you're seeing people that you have struggled kind of, I don't want to say struggled alongside with, but, you realize that they are real people. You realize that they are kind, or at least, genuine people. So it's harder, I think, when new people are coming in, that they have to break into that group. And the easiest way to do that is to go to a lot of events. But if there aren't a lot of physical events to go to, or they're so spread out that the cost becomes prohibitive, it's like the only thing that you can really do is speak for yourself within your work. And if, someone like you is looking at a newer caster that's actually doing a really good job but can't make it out to, God knows whatever tournament, it's a lot easier just because you're just going to be like, okay, I remember when I was him once, or, he's doing things in a way that, is different than I'm doing it.
And that's actually why, I've there's some amateur leagues that happen in the hero scene, and I go out of my way to cast with new people, here and there. Not something I can do all the time, right? I mean, my time is limited at the end of the day, but I think that's always important to do now. But it is hard. It's great to give those guys the chances once in a while, and I think it's something that a lot of communities could use. Like, just kind of put a top commentator with a pretty not necessarily well known but experienced commentator that's put in the hours just to get their name out there and give them a chance to be at the top, and just see what happens, because it's really fun, and sometimes it's insanely rewarding.
I guess it was something that I've been thinking about recently, is how there is a lot of complaints that about content quality, I guess, as time goes on within a community, especially with a focus on Reddit. A lot of people are like, hey, where's the actual like analytical articles or analytical videos or that kind of stuff? And it's like, if you have a large audience, do you feel that you're kind of obligated to kind of shepherd people to like check out that new stuff?
In terms of just like different kinds of content or what?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you see like an analytical article or something, but you don't end up tweeting it, that doesn't really help that content creator that much. Sure, it's one more viewer, but it's like having that vote of confidence from someone that is prominent within the scene is actually going to like help them a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about Town Hall. And, you know, I've always been very open with the community, been saying, hey, if you have something and you want us to shout it out for you, you know, we'll announce it or show it off on the podcast this week. And, you know, I think it's always a big thing to do. I mean, you think about Smash too, like Mail It On Me has done that quite a bit in the past, and they've helped other things grow. And now Smash.gg is a resource for new events to be born and create opportunities and all these new experiences. So I think it's critical to have a basically a central home that will be supporting all the people putting out that content.
Is there like a limit to that generosity where you kind of have to be like, well, we're not going to make you, we're not going to make you rich?
I mean, it's not even about trying to make them rich or give them the exposure or whatever. It just has to make sense logistically based on the news load of that week. I mean, if it's a really slow week, then we might promote 2 or 3, different content creators or whatever based on the things they're doing. But at the same time, you have to remember what your audience is. So my show is about esports. People come to me about promoting their local land they're doing at their LAN center or something. I'm like, okay, that's not really like a universal interest. It's a little bit too niche. So I'm kind of like hesitant to do that. Or somebody will come to me about like this plays of the week video they made. I'm like, not a single one of these players is actually involved in esports. This is just like random ladder stuff. So I'm the kind of guy where I'm gonna prune that content to things that are relatable to what I'm trying to drive, which is the esports side of things. But with Heroes, I haven't found that there's ever been a situation where there's too much, like people are asking for too much. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where there's just too much content. And maybe that's just the game. I'm not sure.
Has there ever been like a negative reaction to you having to be like, okay, this isn't within the scope of what I'm trying to make?
I mean, not necessarily, because, I'm just pretty straight up front with people about it. Like, this isn't really the focus of the show. Here are other podcasts you can ask to promote your thing. That's just what I say to people.
I mean, that's always good. I wouldn't say lets people down easy, but it's just like there doesn't have to be that confrontation about it. Kind of shifting gears, I guess, to Overwatch now. It's like we're seeing that there's obviously like a giant explosion of people playing it, and it's almost a little premature to kind of start analyzing it because it is kind of still launch month. Like it's within 2 weeks of launch, but I think that the longer kind of beta period is kind of almost accelerated it. It's like we can't just think of it as like being a 2-week-old game, because there have been these people that have been working on it, since the first, they got their beta invites and they've been making content around it since the actual betas started. So it's almost like there's this weird gold rush around the game, because I think everyone was able to like figure out that it was going to be a big thing based on it being different from CSGO and the MOBAs and Hearthstone and that kind of thing. Did you ever kind of have that like weird feeling being like, I'm going to have to get into this early if I want to kind of make something happen with it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I actually started Town Hall Overwatch a few months ago for that exact reason. It's just like, there's a lot of big talent out there that want to get involved in the game, and I'm one of them that really does want to be heavily involved in Overwatch. But just getting my foot in the door early, I did very strategically realize that. And I have not cast a public tournament yet either. And it is kind of scary. It's just like, whoa, there's already been a few lands, and like, obviously my name's not on the table because I haven't cast anything yet. But I'm also one of those weird people where I want to build my own thing first. So I'm kind of taking the same path I did with Heroes, where I created my own opportunities for myself, and I'll be doing that for Overwatch.
Does the kind of Blizzard audience help that, you have audience coming from other Blizzard products, that, there is going to be that crossover with Overwatch, especially, the heroes are going to be in Heroes?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that I now have an established audience on Twitch too. I mean, that's invaluable. When I started streaming Heroes, I mean, I had 0 followers, right? I had to start from nothing, and now I have 24,000 followers. So it's a lot easier for sure.
I think a lot of people kind of misjudge the scale in terms of like where you're going from 0 followers to 24,000. did the time fly, or was there kind of that, were you aware of the grind?
The time flew. It certainly did. But it's my life. I mean, I literally wake up and I'm on my phone reading or emails or making graphics for shows or whatever. I mean, it's what I do. We're talking 70, 80 hours a week for almost 2 years now.
How would you, like, what advice would you give to someone who's like trying to get into things and then kind of feeling negative or not as kind of patient as, I guess, someone like you would be?
I mean, the things I always tell everyone is just you kind of have to, one, find a schedule and stick to that schedule. And if your life is too busy to do everything, just buckle down and do 1 or 2 videos that are consistent on a topic or theme every week and just keep doing it. It only takes one moment, one video that blows up or whatever to make your mark. It's really all it takes. And just keep grinding for that moment. And if you find that the content you're putting out if you don't absolutely love it, make sure you rewatch your own content, one. But if you don't absolutely love it, then, find out why and fix it.
I think a lot of people just kind of think that they need to do the 7-day-a-week stream, or I need to have 5 videos Monday to Friday.
Everybody thinks that's what it is, but you really just need to put out a consistently strong thing. I mean, I got to give a lot of props to, again, I mentioned Josh Ebb earlier. He puts out a thing called the Monday Melee every Monday. He watches the tournaments on the weekend. He's a huge fan of esports. He breaks down a fight, and then he basically analyzes that in a video once a week. He's built a pretty sizable YouTube with that video, and from the success on that, he can obviously expand and do a different series and so on and so forth.
And then I think the next thing we're going to see in probably the next year is people really taking advantage of funding models like Patreon, mostly just because if you are creating like a tangible product, and I don't mean a tangible product, but it's like I've tried to do some stuff with writing, and writing is a little bit weird in the case that you can't compartmentalize it as easy as something like video or art, where you're posting this thing that is out and then it's self-contained and that's it. So like I get the feeling people are going to kind of wisen up to be able to leverage their audience a little bit more in the next year. Something that I wanted to ask is, do you have any kind of like hopes for the future of HOTS?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I think have made the game kind of almost stagnate and just kind of not grow as much as it could. And it's just the client itself doesn't really support a lot of the features it needs. I mean, we still don't use the in-game draft, but that comes out in June. So we're like 2 weeks away of having, no, that's not even coming out in June. That's basically, we have an in-game draft system that works with bans, but we don't have the ability to swap heroes with our teammates at the end of the draft, which is basically preventing us from using that in competitions, because you don't want to, you don't want to be locked in to that specific hero if you might want to trade out while you're drafting. But anyways, we finally have a ladder coming as well. So my biggest hopes and needs for that game were having a proper ladder and ranking system with progression. That'll be launching in a couple weeks. But we do need, and I'm really just hoping to see that they ultimately give us I completely blinked my mind. Yeah, the swapping at the end of the draft. But additionally, the game needs a better observer interface with more tools and more stats. Like one thing I've always loved about Dota is the graphs they show at the side of the screen, all the information that you have. And I think the UI in general in Heroes for esports is kind of weak. So I would like to see that get revamped someday.
I mean, I get the feeling that Blizzard didn't exactly plan for it to be like a large esport when it was developed. So it's just kind of one of those things that if the demand is there, you eventually gotta code it in. But unless people are going to be loud enough to demand it, it probably won't happen.
It's hard to say. I mean, it does feel that way. It does feel like they built the game and they're like, hey, if it becomes an esport, great. But at the same time, they seem to be pushing pretty hard for there to be an esports scene, because they put millions into the tournaments every year and they run things like Heroes of the Dorm. So it's just kind of weird that those features are, lagging behind still.
Is Heroes specifically, like, compared to the other games, like, I don't mean to just put you on the spot and be like, game versus game versus game, but for some reason I don't feel that League of Legends or Dota would be as suited to the whole Heroes of the Dorm special. Like, it seems that Heroes of the Storm is actually very very friendly to that kind of compartmentalized package, mostly just because the games are a little bit shorter. There's not as many mechanics that you need to kind of explain to a new audience who might be tuning in for the first time. And, there's a good chance that people have played the games that have the characters that are in HOTS. So what do you kind of think about that in terms of just like the format lending itself to like the TV experience, I guess?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables when it comes to television. And I think, yes, kind of like you said, the lack of last hitting, the lack of, some of the individual levels and all these different things that kind of make the game have more like complexity. When Heroes is more about just actual teamwork, coordination, and team fighting. Makes it a lot easier to understand because it's literally just about the execution of team fights and making the right call in Heroes of the Storm, which does make it a lot easier to comprehend for the average viewer. Because I'll tell you, if you put Dota 2 on television, people would be completely and utterly just confused if they had never seen it. But Heroes, it's easy enough to understand. These guys are dead. These guys are fighting. Oh, yeah, they're fighting again. Oh, 20 minutes later, the game's over.
It's kind of, there's just like an introduction. Like you kind of have to ramp up the amount of things that you're introducing to a person, and you have to rely on them to do their own research. And something I didn't like when I started watching Dota was I needed to have a wiki that was open, 24/7 when I was watching Dota, to understand half of what the acronyms meant for items and mechanics and that kind of stuff, because there wasn't a good way of explaining it. And I think that what you were saying, people fighting and making the right decisions while doing it, at the base level, that's what people want out of an esports broadcast when they're watching it. They want to be able to take those elements and enjoy them as much as possible. And if they want to know what specific heroes are doing, then sure, they can open up a browser window and see, the greater details in terms of the talents and the scaling and that kind of stuff. But at the base level, the person that's just going to be turning it on and has no emotional investment over whether they know or are good at the game or that kind of thing, they just have that. They have the things that they want to see without having to kind of learn a lot to go with it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is just completely on the spot, though. It's like really, Dota and like is just a little bit too complex when it comes to the systems. And I also think about just like other variables that might make TV not work, and it's like blood, right? You think about Counter-Strike, and it's pretty non-gory, but you think about Call of Duty and it's a little bit bloodier, and there's a lot of other games that get even more bloodier. But
like Mortal Kombat, or a Killer Instinct, I cannot imagine in a mainstream environment, just because I think that gaming in general has moved past that aesthetic a little bit.
Oh, definitely. But I'm just thinking of like TV in general and acceptance, and like Counter-Strike and Call of Duty are a little bit too realistic, even though they might not be super gory. So I feel like those games probably wouldn't fly on TV either. It's like about not only what's easy to understand, what's perceivable by the average viewer, but also whether or not it's something that's socially acceptable. Like Overwatch is like cute and colorful, so that makes sense for TV to me. It's like it's got all these. It's a very Pixar.
It's a Pixar movie.
Even though it's with guns, it's like Pixar with guns, pretty much. Like.
Yeah. I want to come back to that, but there's one thing that I wanted to ask you about. Is you were saying that Counter-Strike might be a little bit, unfriendly for TV. What I am scared about is what happens when the first mass shooting happens in the States, and then like the next big one, and all of a sudden you've got a shooter on TV that involves killing terrorists and counter-terrorists for money, watched by 500,000 kids. That's a giant bullseye for any kind of mainstream media to just be like, hey, this is a negative thing that's influencing our kids. I'm curious to hear what more people think about that kind of thing. Like what will happen with the whole Turner Counter-Strike League?
There will always be people that are older, that don't understand the culture of gaming because they didn't grow up with it, that are about gaming, that are against gaming, excuse me. Always, no matter what. And any single moment that type of person can find and point a finger at something like E-League, they will. But I think, as our esports industry grows, we just need to disregard them. There's going to be people that hate it. There's going to be people that think it doesn't belong on television because they're closed-minded. And it's irrelevant whether or not they want to claim that this shooting was caused by that, because there have been thousands of shootings in this country. I mean, America, I don't know why, it's a big country, but people like to
Like their guns. Like their guns.
Yeah, it's an awful thing. It really is, and it's been going on a lot longer than gaming has.
Yeah. Just not trying to make this into a political discussion or anything more. So it's just more of like, do you think that you have to be kind of a positive ambassador or evangelist for gaming in order to kind of like give people that, oh, normal people can like this too?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we are normal people at the end of the day. Like, we're passionate about not a competition. It's not just video games. This is a culture. This is people that are talented and good at what they do, and they're performing on a stage and executing their plays as a team in an impressive fashion. And I just love watching it.
Has there ever been any moments in your kind of career where you've been ashamed of, like, you've been in like a non-gaming environment, and just the way that someone's framed an argument or just the way that someone's framed esports has made you ashamed of like what you like?
Yeah, some people have like very strange perspectives of things, I would say. And I can't think of a specific environment right now, but definitely there are people that could give a non-esports fan kind of a weird point of view of what we are.
Not so much that, it's more of just like, have you ever talked with someone who has been like, oh yeah, that's just for a bunch of nerds, and then you've caught yourself being like, oh, what I do like is kind of a little bit weird? Do you always have that kind of confidence in like what you enjoy, and just like
I am not in the slightest bit ashamed of what I do. I have full confidence and pride. Like, I'm a nerd and I'm proud of it. Like, there is just zero negative sense at all there.
I think there's almost no room for it, because if you're worried about that kind of stuff, you're never really, you're taking away attention from things that you can actually like do.
Exactly. I mean, whether or not this culture is considered nerdy or whatever it's all irrelevant. It's what I care about. It's what I love, and that's what it is. And if somebody has, a different point of view, well, guess what? I don't watch football. I don't watch baseball, and I think that's a waste of time. But that's my point of view.
Do you have any advice for someone who might be considering themselves overthinking about that kind of thing? Like, I for a lot of people, I just think you're thinking too much about this. You need to just like buckle do and do the work. Do you have any advice for people that might be kind of thinking a little bit too much about like the context of the work and not the work itself?
Yeah, you just got to think to yourself, what do you truly care about? Like, what do you love? Like, what makes you happy? Pursue it. It doesn't matter what it is, unless it's something really weird.
Unless it's hurting other people.
Yeah, right. If it's harmful to others and illegal, you probably shouldn't pursue that.
This is where we get into the gray area of trying to convince ourselves, okay, let's just give all these checks and balances of, okay, if it doesn't hurt people, if it doesn't hurt people without their consent, like, there's all these just like different things you have to keep adding onto it, and just be like, okay, well, yeah, don't murder anyone. Let's put it that way.
But hey, yeah, if it does not affect others in a negative way and you truly, truly love it, you should be pursuing it. Because let's face it, I mean, life is short, and you just got to go for whatever you do. I used to work third shift at a grocery store where I was completely and utterly miserable, stocking yogurts for a living. And I just
now you own a house.
I just kind of jumped off that ledge, I guess. And went to college when I was almost like a high school dropout, because I always hated school. I wasn't almost a high school dropout, but I could have been if I wanted to, like, because I had no intentions of going to college. And when it came down to it, I went to school many years after graduating high school, and I just went, and I never stopped. And like you said, yeah, now I own a house. I'm planning on starting my own business. I've traveled around the world doing commentary. It's you just got to pursue it, right? You just say, this is something I care about. This is my passion, and I'm going to chase it.
I think that's a good place to end up. Thanks so much, Jake, for talking. I really appreciate you being the first guest on this kind of like the pilot episode of Sessions. But yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
No problem. Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, it's just SolidJake GG on pretty much everything.
I love the GG acronym, or like the GG adding is like a thing that's happened in the last 2 years, where it's like, oh God, everything is taken for what I want, or you need consistency across all platforms. So it's like, better slap the GG on there. It works, and that's all that really matters, as much as it works. Again, thanks for checking this episode out, guys. You can check out the Sessions podcast, like we were just saying. It helps to be consistent across all platforms. We are Sessions Cast, pretty much anywhere that's relevant. YouTube, SoundCloud, and .com, where you can find all the show notes and kind of archives of all the episodes that we're doing. Again, thanks so much, Jake. I hope you have a good day, and for all the people listening, I hope you guys have a good night. Thanks for listening.